Hey everybody, in this video we are going to talk about how to create bass lines if you, like me, have no music theory or formal composition skills. We will discuss 7 methods for crafting the nether regions of an arrangement, especially if you like music like house or techno, but some of these tricks work in other genres too. Although I produce a lot of music people actually listen to, I still consider myself to be an amateur, so these tricks will be most helpful for that demographic, but even experienced musicians might be surprised by how little they can get away with. Chapter 1: The Offbeat Donk. Let's start this out with one of the most archaic bass lines in dance music history. Program a 4 on the floor beat, copy your kick pattern, shift it 2 steps to the right, but instead of the kick it needs to trigger a donk. Traditionally, this donk is a very simple sound made with an FM synthesizer. But it is perfectly fine to use ridiculously overprocessed samples you found on the internet. If you don't want to limit yourself to Russian hard bass, you can swap the donk for any other punchy bass tone. Shift the notes around a bit for a bass line you're not embarrassed to play in front of your friends. Leading us to probably the most important permutation of this bassline. Chapter 1a: The Goer Gallop. Wanna be a Psytrance producer? Just crank the tempo to 140 BPM, put notes on every step that isn't covered with kicks, ideally triggering relentlessly digital sounding plugins. As soon as it sounds like a lawnmower hitting a rock, you're good. If you really want to blow the minds of your sleep-deprived audience, try to find a way to set your DAW or sequencer to what real musicians call triplets. It is socially acceptable to stick to one note for prolonged periods of time. Up to 3 days is totally fine. Chapter 2: The Oompa Loompa. This one is great if you have very limited resources, both technically and intellectually, ideal for genres like old-school minimal techno. We will use the low tom of this ancient drum machine as our bass tone. But instead of the classic offbeat, we will move the first and third tone 1 step to the right until it sounds like Oompa Loompa. You can replace the tom with a real bass synth too. And again introduce some variations, but you don't have to. Chapter 3: The Fake Sidechain. As you might have already figured out, there's something going on between kick drums and bass tones. Low frequency content takes up a lot of space in your arrangement, and everything we did until now had one goal and one goal only. Keep kick and bass separated so your mix is nice and tidy. We are going to stick to that simple recipe, this time by implementing a little sound design trick. Let's load a so-called Reese, that's a fancy term for continuous wall of dirty bass, into a sampler. Set the note length to quarter notes. Again trigger it with a copy of the kick drum pattern for the worst bass line of all time. And then make sure that every note has a little fade in the beginning, ideally by adjusting the attack parameter of the amp envelope. Yes, that almost sounds like the sidechain effect you hear on every EDM track, and it's only half as complicated. Re-spaces without the fade-in also work great in drum and bass. Chapter 4: The Easy Way Out. Although playing bass notes and kick drums at the same time can lead to problems, it is not only possible, but in this case
super easy, barely an inconvenience.
All you need is a sequencer that can be set to pattern lengths that deviate from the good old 16 steps. On this one, this feature is called last step, but you can also use a DAW. Define one of these non-conformist patterns. I like 5 a lot. Enter a few notes that make you feel something, but not many. That's it. This technique, which is called Polymeter by nerds, leads to seemingly ever-changing and hypnotic musical motifs. It's also great for non-bass sounds, and side effects are stereotypical dancing, dropping out of college and moving to Berlin. Chapter 5. The acid. As we have finally entered the realm of bass lines with an actual chance of kicks and bass tones clashing, we will have to find a way to make their mingling musically enjoyable. For example, by choosing a big kick and lighter bass. The archetype of these bass lines that aren't real bass is the acid, traditionally generated by using the iconic Roland TB-303. I'll use the official successor to this classic, but every synth with a resonance parameter will do. In order to create the psychedelic patterns, you just have to enter random notes into the sequencer. Again, bonus points for doing this in a way that does something to your body chemistry. Add a few accents, preferably in places where they don't interfere with other mix elements, and slides for that extra sauce. Profit. Chapter 6. The Rumble. The good news is this method requires no musical skills at all. The bad news, you will have to jump in at the deep end when it comes to sound design. Program a kick, split it so you have an exact copy on another channel, leave the first one unprocessed, and then go medieval on the second one by turning it into an ugly blob using reverb. Remove the high frequency content because you know rumble. Crank it with a toxic cocktail of plugins. And do some boring housekeeping stuff so people on the dance floor don't throw up immediately. Finally, and most importantly, sidechain it to the unprocessed kick. Feel free to create layers for other parts of the frequency spectrum to make it less boring. Chapter 7. The Giorgio. Pioneers of electronic music had to struggle with two things: no YouTube tutorials about bass lines and only very rudimentary sequencing hardware. As a result, many early compositions sound like the riffs real bassists would play if they had to use a pocket calculator to control an awesome Moog. Stick to a short yet busy pattern consisting of notes considered to be inoffensive by your local bingo hall committee. Maybe transpose it throughout the entire song for dramatic effect. Repeat. I hope that taking a glimpse into a few of the dirty little secrets that allow me to churn out multiple pieces of somewhat listenable music every week doesn't take away the fun of watching this channel, and sorry for not including absolute classics like the 8-note octave jump or dubstep wobble. Feel free to leave a comment about your music production life hacks. Let me know if any of today's strategies worked for you. Like, subscribe, become a patron, and use one of the links down below that support the channel regardless of what your guest commands you to buy. Thanks for watching and see you next time.